Our guest speaker tonight is Gabrielle DeMelon, who is the Technical Outreach Coordinator, Mary Gannon, who is the Wildlife Outreach Coordinator, and Lindsay Foley is a URI student who will be monitoring all the chat and everything. So just to put in a plug for the library, if you are interested in our programs, please check out the library website. It's portsmouthlibrary.org, and there's always something going on at the library. So I'll turn it over to Gabby.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you for hosting us. So I'm Gabby, and this is Mary, and we're out here at the Great Swamp Management Area. This is an awesome location. We're right near the University of Rhode Island down in West Kingston. And if you have had a chance to watch that video, you'll see that we actually have a lot of property all throughout Rhode Island in our state management areas. And just like we said, these are all supported by hunters and anglers through the purchase of those firearms, ammunition, and archery equipment. And so we get this really great space. And we're also going to get to hopefully see a woodcock tonight, because we have a grad student who's working on a collaborative project with DEM. And he's trying to trap woodcock and monitor their movements by putting these little backpack trackers on them. So hopefully he'll catch one tonight. If not, we're still going to catch up with him to see if he can show us just how he traps them and some of his equipment, and talk a little bit about his project. So with that, I think we will get started talking about some young forests, and we'll also try to talk a little bit about coyotes, because I know that's a big topic in Portsmouth and something you're all interested in as well. So I'm going to flip the camera around and show you some of our young forest habitat. All right.
I'm gonna pull down. I'm far enough away from Gabby so I don't have to shout through my double mask. Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Gannon. I'm the Wildlife Outreach Coordinator with the Rhode Island Division of Fish and Wildlife, and welcome to the Great Swamp. So Great Swamp is our home base. This is where our field headquarters are located. If I start doing this, there's a lot of bugs out here tonight. I had my mask on, it was helping. So the Great Swamp is about 3,600 acres, and this is a very unique property because it has such a wide diversity of habitat. So on our management area system, we try to get as much habitat as we possibly can, as much connected habitat as we can, because if you're a wild animal, it makes a lot of sense if you can just go from place to place without having to cross a road or go through a parking lot, something like that. So our management areas really help to combat fragmentation in the state. So that's when we take habitat and we chop it up into little pieces, separate it, and make it a lot harder for an animal to find all of those resources that they need. So when you conserve over 3,000 acres in one place, that's really beneficial for wildlife. And as Gabby mentioned, we work a lot with hunters and anglers. So this is a place that you can go hunting and fishing. So that's why we're wearing our orange hats. But that's primarily to provide habitat for wildlife, also to provide that opportunity for folks to engage in those recreational activities. But when you conserve habitat, it doesn't matter if you're conserving it, with the purpose of deer hunting or turkey hunting, the habitat's still conserved. So everything on this piece of property is benefiting from that habitat conservation and management, which is great. So tonight we're going to be talking about young forest habitat. This is a type of habitat that we're focusing on particularly across the region, because most of our forest is actually mature forest. So Gabby, if you want to actually turn around, you can show mature forest behind me. So this is what most of our forest looks like across the region, with the exception of these holly trees. So Great Swamp is very unique because it's an oak holly forest type, which is not very common across Rhode Island. So this is a very unique forest type. So we're very proud to have it here. But your mature forest is about 70 to 100 years old. And if you've taken a walk anywhere in Rhode Island or across New England, you're very familiar, most likely, with stone walls running through the woods. And that is a clue as to the landscape history. So prior to European settlement, we had forest and older growth forest that was disturbed naturally through fire, through storms. Indigenous people were very active on the landscape in farming and also in habitat management. They did controlled burns to drive game and to create habitat for game. which is a little known fact. It's very interesting to know that. But then once the Europeans got here, they started large scale clearing land to the point where Rhode Island really had no forest left. And then as time goes on, people start moving away from their farms. They move west for better farmland. They start moving into the cities for the Industrial Revolution, and the farms get abandoned. So what happens when you leave land alone? It starts to go through stages of what we call succession. So the first thing that's going to grow up in your meadow are going to be your grasses and your wildflowers. Then you're going to start to see some shrubs grow, then young trees. Then 70, 100 years later, if you haven't touched it, it turns into this. So this is great. This is beautiful. We love mature forest, and it's very important for a lot of wildlife. However, it's also very important to have diverse forest types and diverse age classes of forest. So we want to have, a nice kind of like patchwork quilt of mature forest, young forest, some shrubland, some meadows and fields. That's all important for different wildlife, right? Not everything uses mature forest. So if you're something like a monarch butterfly, you're definitely not going to be in the mature forest. You're going to be out in the meadow. So it's very important that we think about all of these habitat types on our management areas. And that's why we've started doing a lot of selective management of our habitats for young forest. And this is a region-wide effort because much of New England has gone through this same timeline, so to speak. So we're all working together, all the New England states, all the state agencies, nonprofits, et cetera, are working on, if you've ever heard of the Great Thicket National Wildlife Refuge, that is a region-wide refuge that is spread out throughout the region, but that is to create that young forest thicket type habitat that we so desperately need. And we'll talk about why we need it in just a little bit. So let's take a look at young forest and see the difference.
Hey, Mary, can we look at a holly tree? Because I know you're talking about holly. Some people might not know.
So most people, I think of like holly as like the little holly bushes that you plant in your front yard. You can get them at the nursery or whatever, and you trim them, and that's about it. This is the holly tree. So this is a decent sized tree, and you can see the leaves look just like your holly bush that you may have planted in your yard. This does produce berries, those bright red holly berries, but it is a full-size tree. And this is very valuable for wildlife, not only for those berries, but for shelter as well. This provides, evergreen coverage throughout the winter.
Yeah, this is a great thing to have in your backyard to support birds without having to have a bird feeder out if you don't want a bird feeder. Natural plant.
Absolutely. So we've got our young forest on this side. So we're on a road in the Great Swamp. So these roads are accessible for our vehicles. We do not allow motorized vehicles on the management areas, but this is a great walk. If you're coming out here, it's awesome because nice wide path. You're hopefully not gonna pick up a tick because you're not gonna be bushwhacking. But if you walked over here, you definitely pick up ticks. So this is one of our young forest patches, and we have multiple patches throughout the Great Swamp that we've cut over the years. So if you take the nice walk along this road, you'll see this, which is a recent clear cut. So this cut was done in 2017. So fairly, it seems like so long ago, 2017 now. So this is fairly recent. And when this was done, this was totally like, it would look like, we'd say demolished, right? Oh my gosh, all the trees were cut down. Not all the trees though. So now that it's been, 4 years now, or going on 5. Look at all this beautiful regrowth that we've had. So when you cut down those trees, we'll leave the stumps, and stumps will actually resprout. If you've ever seen a tree, in the forest or in a park that looks like it's 2 trunks growing out of the same stump, that's exactly what we're looking for here, only on a much larger scale and with a lot more sprouts. So when you see that big tree that's been, split in 2, that's over a long period of time. So what we've got here, we've got a great example right here. Actually, Gabby,
Yeah, right behind you. Yep.
This is a great example of a stump that is experiencing what we call coppice growth. So coppice growth is what we call all of those little shoots coming out of the stump. This looks like a maple that's growing here, so that's great.
You can see the little buds on the maple tree right here. Whoop, there you go. And then see our beautiful sunset is happening behind us. I think I just heard Colby pull in. So I think he's getting ready to set up his nets. So we might go a little bit after 8 o'clock today. I meant to mention this earlier because the woodcock they come out a very particular time, and it sometimes is a little bit later. So we might end up being in the dark, and we might go a little past 8 o'clock. If we catch a woodcock, we might go up until 8:30, but hopefully we will have gotten a woodcock by about 7:50. So if you want the chance to see a woodcock, at least hang on until 7:50, and then we can let you know if we found one, and if we didn't, we'll still head over to see Colby. All right, back to the young
Back to young
forest.
forest. So what makes young forest so valuable with all of this resprouting, and we see a lot of young trees, you know, there's a lot of branches here, right? This is not like your big trunks, you have a lot of space, you know, idyllic pathways to walk through. And a lot of people look at this and say, oh my gosh, you ruined the habitat. What did you do? That's not necessarily true. So all of this regrowth and all of this dense brambly kind of habitat, and I'm not going to walk too far in because there's a lot of bullbriar in here. Not fun to walk through, but excellent for wildlife, creates a lot of shelter, also produces berries for birds. All of this right here, if you are a small animal, like the American woodcock, which is a small ground nesting bird, so they're only about this big, you'll get to see one up close, hopefully. They're very well camouflaged. You know, this is perfect habitat for you to build your nest, because a predator is going to have a lot harder time finding you in this as opposed to a more open forest floor, which is what we see in a mature forest. Another species that is critically dependent upon young forest is the New England cottontail. So if you've ever seen a cute little bunny in your yard, or perhaps nibbling on your garden, you're like me, I'm like battling the bunnies with lots of little chicken wire cages around my plants in my yard. Those bunnies that we see out in our yards and parks, on golf courses, out in the open, that's actually a non-native species of rabbit called the Eastern cottontail. So they're from the East Coast. They were brought here for hunting stock and opportunity way back when. And our native New England cottontail began to decline, not just because of the introduction of a non-native rabbit, but because of the decline of this habitat. So we had large scale clearing, and then it grew up and we had a lot of this. And then all of a sudden, now we have lots of mature forest and development in the state. So that doesn't allow a lot of space for this type of habitat. The New England cottontail loves to be in this cover. They do not like to be out in the open like the little bunnies, the Eastern cottontails that you see on your lawn. So the Eastern cottontail, you know, would use, you know, brambles and stuff like that to be camouflaged, etc. But the New England cottontail highly relies on this type of habitat. So this is actually very special at the Great Swamp, because we have released New England cottontails here. So if you've followed this over a number of years, it's been in the news. So this is across the region, this rabbit has declined, and we're working with all the New England states and New York to captive breed New England cottontails at the Queens Zoo and the Roger Williams Park Zoo. So the captive breed rabbits then go out to a hardening pen at Ninigret National Wildlife Refuge in Charlestown. And that pen is like an acre, you know, it's pretty big. It's got a top to it, so predators can't get in, avian predators. And that's where the rabbits learn from being, you know, a captive reared rabbit to being an outdoor rabbit. And then once they're kind of in there for a little bit, we transport them to Patience Island in Narragansett Bay, which is all this. The whole island looks like this. It's perfect for them. It's got, you know, it has predators, but relatively fewer than here at the swamp. We're crawling with all types of things: foxes, coyotes, fisher, mink, weasels, owls, hawks, everything you can possibly think of that would eat a bunny lives here, as they should. But once they go out on Patience Island, we have a breeding colony there, and we have been able to supplement rabbits to other states, and also here in Rhode Island at the Great Swamp with our little breeding colony on Patience Island. So it's a way that we can have that founder colony. We're monitoring their genetics through a partnership with URI and the Wildlife Genetics Lab there. And the bunnies go out here. We just recently released one just before Easter. Gabby took a video.
Yeah, we actually released 6, I think.
6
it was.
here.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and there is evidence that they are breeding here too. So each year we have seasonal techs go out with little test tubes, and they look for bunny poop, those little M&Ms that you find on your lawn. They're going through this to look for the rabbit poop. They collect it, they run DNA analysis. So they basically pull cells from the outside of the pellet. As it passes through the rabbit, it picks up cells from the colon, and that has DNA in it. So they're able to pull the rabbit's unique DNA to see individual bunnies, and they're able to see that they are breeding here. So that's great. That's really great news. And it's tough to restore a critter like a rabbit, because everything eats them. So a prey species is very difficult. Their lifespan is naturally very short in comparison. Something like a turtle, which can live 100 years. Rabbit maybe lives 2 years if it's lucky, if it's a very elderly rabbit in the wild. So this habitat has worked really, really well for New England cottontail through all of these management efforts. So this is a more recent cut. We've got some cuts that were done maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 down the road, which we're not going to show because it's a little bit of a longer walk. But just imagine this grown up even more and tighter. And that's really, really great dense habitat. Now, it's not just great for woodcock and New England cottontail, but also 40 species of songbirds use young forest because it provides a lot of cover. It provides a lot of food, a lot of insects, and places to build your nest. But so why we say, oh, why don't we just have all young forest? What's the purpose of the mature forest? What's really interesting is that some birds that breed in the mature forest use the young forest in migration period to fuel up and to rest, and vice versa. They might go into the mature forest. If they're breeding here, they might go into the mature forest to grab some food or whatever they might need. But this is critical. So if you love to bird watch, you should love young forest because it's a really cool spot to see a lot of warblers and different things of towhees. I'm surprised you don't hear any towhees right now. That drink your tea. They're very prominent in here. We also get reptiles in here, snakes, salamanders will use some of this cover on the bottom. So when we cut the trees down, the logger takes away, the actual logs that they can use, and they'll leave what we call slash on the ground. So Gabby actually,
Can I come right over here?
You can see Gabby showing kind of the crown of the tree.
Yeah. So this is what we're calling slash. So it's basically a bunch of stuff that's left on the ground, and it serves a few different purposes. So first of all, it helps hold in moisture. If we took everything up, then it would just be totally barren and the soil would dry up really quickly. And then the other thing is it kind of protects the little seedlings as they come up so that deer can't really get to them, and it's harder for the deer to walk through all this slash. So it serves a couple different purposes, but it might look a mess, like someone just left all these logs lying around, but it does actually have a function in this young forest habitat. And then, so we've got the trees falling down. We've got lots of little things growing up, and we also left some standing trees. And so you can see these trees that are really tall over here. We didn't leave those by accident either. We left those trees so that they can drop seeds so that we can repopulate this young forest with the seeds from these trees. So that's why we have like a few big trees, lots of this young forest coming up, and then the slash on the ground. So all these different things left here on purpose. It looks like a big mess, like Mary said, but it all has a purpose and a meaning.
And that's going to decompose over time and add to the soil. But another thing that we do leave, so we've got beautiful, healthy trees that we leave up, but we also leave trees that don't look so great, that are kind of on their way out. We call those snags. Snags are excellent for wildlife. So think about, all that rotting wood, all the bugs that are going to be in it. Awesome for woodpeckers, awesome for cavity nesting birds like chickadees. Great for, owls if they're nesting in a cavity. Bats will use the cavities in the trees as well as the peeling, rotting bark. They love to tuck themselves up. If you've ever found a bat underneath your shutter of your house, that's mimicking that bark on the tree. So that's what they're thinking they're encountering when they get to your shutters. So we do leave some existing snags, and then we'll take a look at the trees. The forester and the habitat biologist will take a look and they'll say, all right, that tree looking like it's probably on its way out. So they'll select that one to become a snag. So they'll girdle the tree with the chainsaw. So they cut just a little bit into the bark. It slowly kills the tree, and then that becomes a new snag. So when these snags eventually rot and fall over, we have another one that's going to be taking its place eventually to provide that same habitat benefit. So it always seems like people are like, oh, don't cut down trees, it's bad, let's plant the trees, which is all very true. Deforestation and habitat loss is very, very much a problem. But when we carefully manage forest, like for a particular forest type, all of these tree cutting activities are done with a specific purpose. So we're not just coming out here and just like, bulldoze it. They've selected this site to say this is a good site in its proximity to another clear cut. So then as that clear cut starts to age up and become much older, when that one gets 20, 25, 30 years, this one is going to take its place as the young forest section. So in the Great Swamp, we kind of have a quilt. If you looked at it from an aerial perspective, it looks like a quilt of different habitats. Now, what's great for the woodcock is that, and this is why Colby is studying woodcock here on the Great Swamp, and other graduate students have done studies on them here as well as other management areas. But this spot seems to work really well for them because we have the young forest, we have the open fields, which is where Colby is going to be catching the birds, where they do their sky dance, their annual mating display, which I hope we'll be able to hear them hooting, which might be hard on the call, but we'll see if we'll hear it. So they'll use, that young open field for their springtime display. This is great for the females when they're coming in to lay their eggs. Little babies are, these little fuzzy chicks, and they're brown and tan, and they are going to blend in perfectly here. I've almost walked up on woodcock before, and they're like, oh my gosh, like they're on the nest. You don't realize until they flush that they're there.
Yep.
So they're cryptic, but also they eat earthworms. That's their favorite snack. So we've got a lot of wetland here, a lot of stream edges and wetland edges. That's a perfect place to find earthworms and other bugs, the millipedes and snails and all sorts of stuff like that. So having all of those habitats kind of close together and easily accessible for the woodcock makes Great Swamp an awesome habitat for them, because it's like a one-stop shop. So that's what we try to think of, that's when we say, oh, all of that habitat diversity in one place. It's not just the woodcock that does that. It might be other critters as well that need, young forest, wetland, mature forest, open field. It'd be kind of boring if you just lived in one habitat type. And some are very special, the specialist type critters, but a lot of things just need diversity.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this holly. This is an awesome resprouting holly. If I was a bunny, I would hide over here.
Yeah, and I'll flip it around so you don't. Yeah, I'll flip around so you don't have to stare at Mary the whole time, even though it's great to stare at Mary. So one of the things Mary was mentioning is, we have all these different habitat types, which are great for the American woodcock, and they're what we call an umbrella species. So protecting their habitat, the young forest, as well as all the other types of habitat, they cover all of these other species beneath them. So just by helping the American woodcock, we're also, like Mary said, helping songbirds, helping turtles, helping snakes, helping deer, helping everything, just by protecting the woodcock. So it's, even though it might seem like, why are you putting all this effort into just protecting one animal? It's not actually just protecting one animal. It's covering all of those other species underneath it. And the other great thing, like Mary was saying, is the Great Swamp has all of these different habitat types. So it's awesome to come visit. So you can come hike here, and you might hear a woodcock if you come really early in the morning or just before dark, but the management areas do close 30 minutes after sunset. So you have to, come here and then leave before sunset, but you're welcome to come. And then you also might hear things like owls, like Mary was saying, they like to nest in the trees over here. We've heard them before, and we actually usually do an annual woodcock night where we'll invite people to come out with us, and we can sit in chairs and we watch the woodcock do its display. But of course, with COVID, it's a little bit harder. So we're not able to do that this year. Maybe next year, like everything else that we say. But what was so cool is the last time we were able to do it, we came out here, we saw the woodcock, we heard the woodcock, one landed right next to us. It was awesome. There's a female and a male. And we also heard things like coyotes, and we heard whippoorwills, and whippoorwills will use this habitat too. So lots of really cool wildlife here in the Great Swamp, and that's all because we help manage it. So we have all these different types of habitat that supports all these different kinds of wildlife. And so I know that you guys are probably interested in coyotes because this is through the Portsmouth Library, and we hear a lot of calls coming in from Portsmouth about coyotes. So I wanted to just talk quickly about this really cool partnership that we have with the Narragansett Bay Coyote Study. So Numi Mitchell is the lead biologist on this study. And basically what happened is we were getting all these calls coming into our office from Newport, from Portsmouth, from Jamestown, and they were all saying they're coyotes, they're roaming around, they're in my backyard. And it's not that odd to get calls about coyotes in our office, but it's odd to get so many calls from such an urban area, such a developed area. And so we started thinking, what's causing all of these coyotes to show up in neighborhoods on streets? And so Numi is now studying this dilemma. And what she found is that we're actually bringing them in. And the way that she found this out is she catches coyotes and she puts collars on them with GPSs so that she can see where they're moving. And so she'll track their movement. She can see on the map where they go, where they visit really frequently or return to a lot, where they're spending a lot of time. And so she sees on the map, okay, coyotes are spending a lot of time in this area. And then she goes and visits that spot in person. And what she found is every single one of those, what we call hot spots, or places where they were visiting really frequently, were actually places where humans were supplying food for them, mostly unintentionally. Some people were feeding them on purpose, which is actually illegal in Rhode Island. So you're not allowed to feed wildlife. Definitely don't want to feed coyotes. But the people who were feeding them accidentally were doing so by leaving out pet food outside or leaving their garbage cans uncovered, leaving food scraps in their compost piles, all things like this. And the coyotes were actually thinking that that was food. And so they're coming over and they were eating it. And they kept coming back because the food kept being there. People kept putting that cat food outside and they kept returning and eating up that food. And so they were getting more and more used to being around people and associating people with food. And that's not good because wildlife is supposed to be wild, right? They're not supposed to rely on us. And so now what we're doing is we're trying to get the word out, bring your pet food in at night, keep your garbage can secure, keep a lid on it, only put it out at the curb right before garbage day. Don't put any food scraps or fatty items into your compost pile. Greens are okay. But you want to make sure you mix it with leaves and other things. So all of these things, stopping doing them is actually going to help manage this coyote population. And the reason why we want to make sure that we do this is like I said, so that it remains wild, but also because we're increasing the coyote population. So there's normally only a certain amount of wildlife or a certain number of animals that a habitat can support, but we're providing more resources for them. So now there's more coyotes. So we're actually increasing their population by providing these food sources. And so we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that the habitat only supports the correct number of coyotes, not boosting it, especially in areas where we have a lot of humans. And so that's one way that we found we can help lower the coyote population. The other thing that we found out is that we need to kind of train coyotes. So just like dogs, coyotes can be trained to be wary of humans. So it might seem odd and maybe not quite right to say that we want to scare coyotes and make them afraid of people, but it's really the best thing that we can do for them. Because if you think about it, if a coyote gets really used to, say, you individually, and you think, this coyote loves me and it's friendly with me and it's not going to hurt me. That's not really true, first of all, because it's a wild animal, but also it might get used to you, but that doesn't mean that other people are going to be as accepting as you are. So if that coyote crosses over into another property and starts walking up to people, it's going to be really scary. And coyotes, just like any other animals, can carry diseases like rabies. And even though we don't have a very high number of rabies cases in coyotes in Rhode Island, we still want to be really cautious. They can carry other things too that can make your pet sick. So I just wanted to mention that because I know it's a big thing in Portsmouth and all over in that area. But I think, let me just check to see. Oh, and then I see Lindsay just posted a link to the coyote response guide in the chat. So that's a really great resource. And you can look on there. It tells you exactly how to respond when a coyote does something. So if you see a coyote walking through your yard, that's okay. If a coyote's out during the daytime, not a big deal. If a coyote approaches you, you might want to take an action, and that guide lists all of these steps and what to do if you have a certain encounter with coyotes. So it's a really great guide. It also has a bunch more information about how to stop feeding coyotes, how to train coyotes to not come near you or your house. So a really, really great guide. So I'm just checking the time now, and it looks like it's about 7:34. So I think we could probably talk a little bit about creating backyard habitat. So I'm going to switch it over to Mary, and I'm also going to try to get this beautiful sunset that we have here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's change the scenery. So we'll take a walk around the corner. We'll walk around the corner to the field over here. I'll switch the camera around. Got a gorgeous sunset happening.
if there's any questions, while we're walking, if
Yeah.
anybody has seen any questions in the chat.
Yeah, Lindsay, has anything come up in the chat?
There have been no questions so far, but
Yeah, if you do have a question, you can throw it into the chat. If we don't get to it now, we can also get to it on the way to Colby. I see their cars parked there. I'm
They
wondering.
just walk.
Oh, they walked. Okay, I just want to make sure we don't accidentally scare the woodcock away. Oh, it's so beautiful here. So the swamp is a really great place to visit, except for in the middle of the summer, because it gets very, very buggy and the deer flies come out. So if you want to take a walk, now is pretty good if you go in the middle of the day, but if you were to go in the middle of the day in the summer, not so nice. Oh, wow, this is beautiful.
Oh, this fog.
It's a great sunset. So this is some field habitat we have here, and we do mow these fields to prevent invasive species from coming up and to keep it that nice field habitat like Mary was talking about. So we've got some nice grasses coming up over here.
And you only mow in the winter time.
Yep.
Because when you mow in the summer, there could be things living here. So we selectively mow in the winter, and we usually have them on a rotation schedule. So this one will get mowed maybe every 3 years to knock back any of those invasive plants like autumn olive. And we can actually show you there's some multiflora rose.
Oh yeah.
there's a question in the chat about can you snowshoe in this area in the winter?
Yep. So there's the trails are actually pretty wide, so you have a lot of space. We have a lot of cross country skiers that come through and use the roads because they're nice, easy to keep going. Yeah, definitely. I don't see too many snowshoers, but I know folks probably do like Arcadia.
Yeah, and the
do it on
the bike path actually is very close to here. Part of the bike path runs through the Great Swamp, but if you get to right by the train station before you cross the road, you can take a left and go down the dirt road, and that's how you make your way to the management area. It's a little bit far in, but if you were say riding a bike or something, you could ride in. And you can just see how beautiful this sunset is. I hear lots of crickets. Just trying to see if I can hear any coyotes or owls or whippoorwills.
That mute too.
I hear some geese. So you've got right down there, there's the impoundment. So that is the wetland that's here. It's this really massive wetland we have here in the swamp. And it's actually a man-made wetland. There's a berm that was created to flood the area, and we get a lot of really nice shorebirds coming through. We get a lot of waterfowl in the wintertime. Yeah, it's coming up. We should get some shorebirds coming through about May.
the Oskapog River on the other side.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I always mix up the Chippuxet and the
Yeah,
Oskapog in my brain.
Chippuxet connects to it, I know. I think the other side is the Oskapog.
There is another spot here that there is a trail that will lead down to Warden's Pond as well, which is a nice little overlook.
So we can tell you a little bit more about the woodcock while we're waiting, I think, about their life history, because I don't think we went too far into that.
So we kind of talked about their habitat usage.
Yeah, we can go this way so we can see the sunset and see us.
Yes, we talked about a little bit about their life history with their use of the habitat and how they use all these different habitats. But what we're really out here tonight to so what we're really out here tonight to I guess capitalize on for research is their very predictable habit.
I just heard one flying.
They're very predictable habits of arriving to a singing ground, so an open field. So the males in April and May, they are a migratory species, so they go south for the winter. They'll start popping up here in March, sometimes late February.
Yeah.
And the males will come out to the singing grounds, and they're very site faithful. So if they've come here, last year, it's most likely that they're coming back to the same field. And what they do is they position themselves in a good little spot that they have staked out and defended from other males, being like, this is my singing spot. And they utter a very melodious peent, and then they turn and they go, Eat. And they turn it on. Eat. Eat. And that's what they do. And they just twirl around and do this little peep call. And that is advertising to the females, hey, I'm over here, I'm available. So the females will fly in and they'll select a male as their mate. They mate, and then the females will go off on their own to establish their nest and lay their eggs. The babies are, when they hatch, it's really cool because when you think of a baby bird, you know, if you've ever found a robin's nest in your yard, the baby birds, when they hatch, their eyes are closed and they don't have any feathers and they're very helpless. Not so with the woodcock. And this is similar with wild turkey as well, because they are a ground dwelling bird. They got to be ready. They can't be sitting in the nest and being helpless. So when they are born, their eyes are open. It takes them a little while to dry off so that they're nice and fluffy, and they can walk right after mom and they can follow her around easily. So she's going to be going throughout the forest and going down to the wetland to get worms and things like that, and they feed with her. So she's not like, you know, flying back and forth to the nest like a regular songbird to bring caterpillars and then flying away. They're what we call precocial, so they're very ready to go, and they stick with her for a while, but I'm not sure exactly how long, probably just for the season, and then when they're ready to migrate, they take off, but then they fledge pretty quickly too, just because it's a race against time. Because if you're a little nugget, a little chicky nugget on the forest floor, you're good eating for a lot of different things.
The funny thing too about woodcock is they're actually shorebirds, are considered shorebirds, even though they're not by the shore. They just fall into that same category because they have similar life history, which is so funny that, you know, you're like, oh, it's a shorebird, but you'll find it in a young forest in the middle of the Great Swamp. So it's pretty funny, but they are very cool. And I actually met Colby last year before I got to meet him through the DEM, because I had woodcock chicks and a mom walking through my yard, and it was pretty amazing. Yeah, so they walk just like that. So they kind of stomp on the ground, and the mom was doing it. She was doing the little bop, and the little babies were following behind her, and it was the most adorable thing I've ever seen.
Got a lot of likes on Facebook.
Got a lot of likes on Facebook, but then I contacted Jenny Kilburn, who is our game bird biologist, and I said, there are woodcock in my yard, and she said, oh, you have to tell Colby. And so I contacted Colby, and he came over, and he actually put little transmitters on the babies and on the mom, so he could see where they were going, because he's studying the aspect of their life history also. But we went to go, so I was watching the chicks. I didn't want to disturb them too much. I watched kind of where they went, and I said, okay, they're in this area of the woods. I saw them go into like around this spot. Trying to find those babies was the hardest thing. We were walking so carefully because we were so afraid we were going to step on them, because they were tiny, so small, and they were so well camouflaged, and we would step and look down, it would be next to our foot. That's how well camouflaged they are, even though they were, you know, they're like this big, so we should be able to see them on the forest floor. But they're really, really cool birds. And yeah, their long bill is pretty funny, a long beak.
It's actually flexible, so when they put it down into the mud, it's not like a hard pair of like chopsticks or like a probe or anything like that. It's like able to flex at the end, so they can pick through the mud and find what they need to eat. And like Gabby said, they're actually in the sandpiper family, which is just pretty cool. But you know, if you look at sandpipers on the beach, they got the short legs, they might have a longer bill. These guys are definitely weird looking. They look kind of like a sandpiper, but they're very compact. They've got short legs, big feet, big eyes set on the sides of their heads. They have almost a 360 view of the world around them, because they are very popular as a snack. So both by wildlife and also humans. So they are a game species. So there is a regulated season on woodcock here in Rhode Island and across New England. So that means that hunters only have a specific time of year that they can hunt them. They have a specific bag limit, and that is not during the breeding season, so we do not affect reproduction. It's only during their migration period. So that is done, you know, anytime we have a hunting season on anything, you know, we're talking about these birds, like we absolutely love them, and the hunters do too. So you always have a hunting season on an animal that is hunted in a time of year where it's not going to affect them raising their young. It's not going to affect their their breeding. So like spring turkey season, you know, they've already started, you know, some females are already sitting on nests, you know, now the spring turkey season has started in April and into May, but that's kind of, you know, continuing, but it tapers off as well. But you're only allowed to take male turkeys. You're not allowed to take females because the females have to be sitting on the nest and taking care of their babies. So there's a lot of, Gabby and I do not hunt. We do not grow up hunting, but we work a lot with hunters and we understand how this all works. So it's all of this, wildlife conservation, wildlife management, especially with game species, it's all interconnected. All of those ideas that, that sustainability and the conservation so that we have these birds here for many years to come, both for hunters to harvest, to eat. Supposedly they taste fairly good. I've never tried woodcock. I've had a wild turkey before, but never woodcock. But also for birders to enjoy as well. So they're a very popular species. Some fun things about the woodcock though, they have a lot of fun folk names. So my favorite is Timberdoodle. That is a great name for them. There is actually another PhD student at URI, Erin Harrington, who is running Project Timberdoodle. She was working with community scientists, so volunteers, to go out to listen for the painting calls and looking for their little sky dance displays. They spiral up into the air like a little rocket ship and come down. So she was working with members of the community to do that, which is really cool. So she called it Project Timberdoodle. But what are some of the other ones, Gabby? Bog sucker,
mud bat.
That's a good one. Or twister. That's another.
Lots of fun. Yeah. So lots of cute names. Yeah. So I think we're getting close to 7:45. So before we head over, I thought Lindsay, if you want to just post in the chat the link to our Facebook and Instagram page, because we might not get a chance to do that later. So if you're interested in tuning into more of our programs or finding out what's happening with Fish and Wildlife, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can also take a look at our wildlife outreach page. And what else is on there? Oh, and since May is coming up, it's baby season. So I think we have a link also to the wildlife clinic. And if you do find any baby animals, then you'll want to, that look like they need help, then you're going to want to reach out to them. So Lindsay can put that information in the chat also. We have a program coming up next month on young wildlife, so on baby animals. If you're interested in coming to that, then you can find that on our outreach page and also on our Facebook and Instagram. That's on May 6th. Yep, at 4:30. So that is going to have a lot of information about what to do if you find baby wildlife, what babies are doing right now, and all that good stuff.
Panic, when not to panic.
When to panic, when not.
What do I do? Does it need help? Does it actually need help?
Yeah.
A lot of times they don't. They're just they end up by getting kidnapped.
Yep.
By well-intentioned people who are just worried. So we want to, tell you when to worry and tell you when to not worry.
Yeah, exactly.
Toads.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I can hear there's toads calling in the background, American toads. Yeah, they kind of do this like long trill.
If anybody's gathered anything, they just should understand that I love to imitate animals.
Nothing else.
My woodcock walk. I'll just walk.
We had a question earlier about if the clear cutting has helped the grouse population.
So grouse are tricky. Oh my gosh, the poor grouse. So we recently redid our Rhode Island breeding bird atlas. So the first atlas was done in the 1980s. And as you can imagine, things have changed considerably over time. I don't know if I should so people can hear. So things have changed since the 80s, of course. So now we did a 4-year study, it's 2015 to 2019, where 200 volunteer bird watchers went out and collected data for the bird atlas. And I have looked at the grouse data, and the grouse has significantly declined in the state. So right now, I think they're only in 2 blocks. So the way that the bird atlas works is you have the whole state of Rhode Island, you look at a map, and it's like they put a grid, like a grid system over it. So you have different, quadrats and blocks, as we call them. So I think they're only in 2 blocks right now in Western Rhode Island, on the Connecticut border, in one of our management areas, which is great. But it's been really tricky across the region for grouse. But with that we're hoping that with more young forests, we could hopefully boost up those grouse populations.
Sorry to interrupt, but we got a woodcock. Sorry, Colby just messaged me, so we'll head over there.
So long answer to kind of a simple question. So we haven't seen grouse here at the Great Swamp, but that's not to say it's impossible. But grouse are also having issues with disease as well. I think it's West Nile virus that they're having issues with. So it's not just here in Rhode Island that they're seeing declines of grouse. It's in other places as well. Oh, but really cool bird. Oh, I saw one in Vermont last summer. It was just amazing.
So Colby just texted me that they got one, so we're heading over there now. I also just heard a peent over here, so there's definitely another one close to us, painting away. And if you're wondering if you have a woodcock by you, just go out right around sunset and sit and listen, and you might just get the chance to hear one. There's one that calls right by my house. I also live near Hillsdale Management Area, so that helps. But even where I used to live before, it wasn't near management area. It was a farm field, and that's where those baby woodcocks were. So, oh, I also just heard an owl. I think it's a barred owl. There's a painting, and there's a owling, painting, another peent. Oh, they're everywhere over here. So this is just a great spot for them, and that's in part due to this great young forest habitat that we have right next to us.
The cool thing about the woodcocks is that they're like clockwork. So if you have a nice clear day, it's like 20 minutes after sunset, they'll start calling. If it's a cloudy day, it might be like 15 minutes. And then that's it. Like they're ready to call. Like, so which is kind of fun because wildlife is notoriously unpredictable, right? But it's so cool. You're like, oh, okay, let's watch, let's listen.
Yeah.
If you know a spot where you can see them, like we said, they'll come back every year. Yeah, there's that little buggy peent call. My mom heard one a couple of years ago. She's like, because they'll also call early in the morning. She gets up very early, like 5 a.m. Weird sound. She was describing it to me. I said, that sounds like a timber doodle to me. But yeah, no, it's like a tussock of grass. I thought it was the bird.
Yeah, so we say peent, but probably most people wouldn't. I don't know if most people would describe it as a peent. It's like a buzzy sound almost, and it's pretty short, and you'll hear it over and over again. So I think we're oh, there's another one. We're coming right around the corner, but I just wanted to quickly see if we had any questions before we get to Colby.
There was one in the chat about opportunities for photographing woodcocks. If there's any opportunities to photograph them.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, here at the swamp, if you come out, you just have to make sure that you are out before or 30 minutes after sunset. So you can come here. You can come to any of our other management areas. I'm pretty sure they're in Big River. Like I said, I've heard them in Hillsdale management area. And then if we eventually do have another woodcock night, then you get a chance to see them, though it might be hard to see because it's hard to photograph because it's dark. Oh, there goes one. One just flew by us.
Yeah, it's they're really hard to take pictures of just because they're also very cryptic. And then as it's getting darker, oh, I see this.
I was going to say, I think they're over there. Yep. Okay. Sorry. We're going to turn. I'm going to see. I'm going to switch this around so you can see where we're walking to in case we see another one fly over. All around. I'm going to turn my light on so I know we're coming. Yeah. So yeah, it's hard to see because right now it's kind of dark. So you'd have to have a very good camera to capture them. Oh man, there's one like right here. Can you guys hear that painting? Yeah, let's stop. Can you hear that, Lindsay?
Yeah, we can hear it.
Yes.
It's probably going to accomplish tonight just to make sure everybody heard the sound.
All right, here I see the. Oh, don't walk into the net. Let's walk over here. All right, and here's our crew. You are our gang. All right. It's so exciting. All right, hello. Can I turn my light on you? I hope you don't mind. All right. Here's our crew. All right.
Good evening.
Sorry for blinding you. All right. All right, so who wants to start? Colby, here, Colby, I'll let you
So
start.
hi everyone, I'm a PhD student here at URI. We just caught a mail, so we're gonna work that up first so we can get it released. We're gonna attach a transmitter and a federal leg band to the bird.
Awesome. So the bird is in that bag.
Yep.
So that's a nice, safe way and comfortable way to hold them so they're not scared. So keeping them in the dark is a really nice way to keep them calm. I also hear a whippoorwill going crazy in the background. All right, and then we have Jenny. Yeah,
Hi everyone. I'm the game bird biologist for Fish and Wildlife.
she's helping take some notes here too.
And I'm Scott McWilliams, professor at University of Rhode Island, and helping with this project.
Awesome. And then
I am John Vale. I'm a habitat biologist for Fish and Wildlife.
awesome, great. All right, so let's see our little woodcock here.
You want to take a look at
Oh,
the
yeah.
transmitter too?
Yeah, so this is the transmitter we're going to be attaching, right?
Yep, and it has a unique frequency so we can track them. Take this.
Band around the side.
Here's our little woodcock. So there, you remember we're talking about the really long, flexible beak. You can see he's got really big eyes and that nice camouflage coloration. Oh, nice. Little bit of green. So nice. Awesome.
Colby, these are all 150.
Yep.
So you said they're tiny. They're tiny.
Yep, they're really, really
They have
cool.
really big feet. Oh yeah.
So what's the first thing you're gonna do?
So we're gonna attach a leg band to the bird. So this way, if it's ever harvested or if it's ever caught again, we can figure out where it came from and where it went.
So are people banding all across New England, all across the country?
Yeah, there's a flyway project right now with tagging woodcock with GPSs to track their migration.
Mhm.
So in several of the states, they're out in the fall, putting GPSs and banding birds at the same time.
And then so there's that band. It's this little metal band. It moves around freely, so it's not going to harm the bird, and it's got this unique code on it, so that if this bird is captured somewhere else, then it's really easy to identify it because it's got that unique code.
Colby, what's the band number on that one?
It is 1873 09074. And then we just take some really standard morphometric measurements on the bird that help us sex and age it. So one of the measurements is the bill.
Can you guys hear the woodcock painting in the background?
63. That's millimeters.
Yep.
The outer three primaries we measure, and that's just these really small feathers on the outside of the wing, and that's actually what makes the twittering noise that you hear when the woodcock are
Mhm.
displaying.
See those three outer ones? Those are the ones that are actually making the noise that you hear when they fly up and do their little sky dance.
And the females have wider outer three primaries, and they don't make that twittering noise. They just don't hit each other the same way.
So yeah, when they fly up, it kind of goes like really quick twittering sound as they fly up, and then when they come down, it does this kind of
Probably 10.
pattern, like a tweet, 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 tweet as they come down.
We'll do wing chord.
So what is
This is the wing chord measurement. It's another way to help sex from male versus
You're
female.
gonna have to read that.
It is 128. We age the bird by the secondary feathers 15 through 18. And so after second year birds will
Right here.
not have modeling on, this is the rachis, the center part of the feather. And on second year birds, the modeling travels all the way through both sides of that rachis. But on this bird here, you can see that it's really only on one side of that rachis. And so this is an after second year bird.
That side, not that side.
You're doing ASY.
Yep. I forgot to weigh it, so we'll do that now.
a lot of animals get weighed in pillowcases. This is a very common technique in weighing wildlife. We weigh turtles, we weigh fishers, anything that you can think of, we'll weigh in a pillowcase. Seems
Well, it's
silly,
nice
but
and
it's a
soft,
yeah, but
and
it's a nice way to keep them safe and comfortable.
So this weighs 152 grams of the bag.
Colby, what is it? Because most people don't do metrics. Like what's like an ounces? How big is that?
27 grams in an ounce. So what did you say this was?
152 grams.
Yeah. So it's roughly 6-7 ounces.
Ounces, yes. It's tiny. Very tiny.
And then we just weigh the bag to subtract that off.
Bag weight. And then your light there. Looks like it's 8 grams.
And so now we can put the transmitter on.
Right, so there's that transmitter again.
You need to
Get a
hold
little bit
on.
closer.
Oh, you can put the glue on. I don't know. I'll turn.
And so this just goes on the back of the woodcock. Just wrap underneath. This.
Yeah, this is like little backpack for the woodcock. And there's that antenna that comes up.
Put a little glue on the back.
Sandy, so I know a lot, we get this question a lot, you know, holy, how does that, how heavy is that transmitter for the bird? You know, is that gonna affect the flight, or like, cause it looks kind of bulky, or the bird's only 2 ounces, so
Okay.
how does that work?
Yeah, so there's
So-
requirements. So Scott, what's this one? Does it have to be?
So we're any bird, any animal, yep. Any animal you put a transmitter on, you can't put a transmitter on that's more than 4% of their body weight, because otherwise there's been studies that have shown that if a bird puts up, if any animal has something that light on, it'll act normally. And so this transmitter, a little over 3%, 3.5%.
And then I see a question just popped up. How long does the transmitter last?
So these will transmit for about a year. You can pick how often it transmits when you order them. So I have it so they'll last for a year. So that's like the pulse rate. So when we're tracking them, we can hear the beeping. And so depending on how many beeps you have per minute is how long it'll last. And so I have it so it'll last for a year.
And if they're wondering, it's on the bird for life. The fleas don't come off.
And so
Keep this under the
so
hood.
once they have this transmitter on, then they have an antenna that picks up the signal, and that's the beeping he's talking about.
And then you can put the crimp through now, and then I'll.
Did you get it underneath this?
Yep, I did it. Right there's the little bag of red crimps.
I don't know if you guys can hear. There's a whippoorwill going crazy over there.
So I have you just put it on, you just pull tight, and then we'll switch, and then I'll crimp it.
And could you grab, there's a glasses case in that outer backpack? Outer bottom pack. Yeah. For this, I need glasses.
We can talk about in just a minute. I think once they finish this section about how they trap the birds. I just saw that question come up. They're just kind of focusing on getting this little transmitter on. So we'll try to kind of minimize the time that we
What's that?
Here's the top.
have this bird in hand.
So you'll
So that
make
we don't
as much
stress
as you
it.
like?
Yep, that's good. And then we can switch. I'm stuck with those.
Okay. All right. There's a little metal loop that I put the two ends of the belly bands through. And so Colby's
Can
gonna
hold
now
this.
crimp it. So it basically just puts a little crimp in it so that it holds those two belly bands.
And then I just cut off the excess.
And how many of these have you put on so far, Colby?
35 this season. And last year we put out 74.
Oh, wow. That's a lot. Yeah.
It is a
It's
lot.
going to be great data.
How
Are
many
you
we-
seeing that the birds are mostly still hanging out here at Great Swamp, or are they transferring to other?
So all of the
property?
birds we catch at Great Swamp generally stay here. Some of them do disappear throughout the summer, and we don't really know where they go because we can only use radio telemetry locally. So we have to be within about half a mile or so to pick them up. And so once they get out of that range, it's really hard to find them again.
All right. Is that it? Is that it?
Yep.
All right. Awesome. So now we're gonna just kind of let the bird rest for a little bit.
Yep.
And we can go and talk about the method how you captured this bird, because we jumped right to it because we just wanted to get that bird processed as quickly as possible. And then Lindsay, we'll kind of hold off on questions until Colby's done, because he might answer some as we go. And whoever stayed tuned, thanks for staying tuned a little bit after.
So we have these really tall, they're called mist nets. So you can see there's really fine mesh. That's why they get the name mist. And so the birds at night really can't see them. And so we set up where they're displaying. So the night before, we go out and scout where the males are. So we just place a flag where they're landing. And pretty reliably, they'll come back to that same spot night after night. And so we set up our net. Sometimes we'll use a speaker like we have over here. And so the males will get mad because there's another male in their territory, and they'll come into our net. And so when they hit, they fall into this pocket. So each of these are shells, and so they'll fall in and get tangled, and then we take them out.
Awesome. All right, and then do we have any questions? I saw a bunch popping up in the chat. So Lindsay, do you want to pick some for us?
I don't see any that you haven't already answered yet.
Awesome. Okay. Doing good then. Yeah. So there's another woodcock calling right over.
So that's our speaker.
Oh, I thought I heard it over there. Okay, never mind. The speaker tricked me. So.
But it's a good example of their call, nice and up close.
Yeah. Here, you can get a little closer so you guys can hear. I know you heard it from farther away, but. Oh, I was walking to the net. I'm worse than the woodcock. I'm gonna get trapped here. They're luring me in. They're totally luring me in.
And so we actually, for my project, we're mostly interested in the female woodcock, and they're actually quite difficult to catch using mist nets because they don't come to the same singing ground each night. They mate with multiple males, and so the chances of catching them are pretty slim because you have to be at the right spot where they're going to be that night.
Yeah.
But actually using playback with the speakers can sometimes lure in females too.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Did you want to talk any more about kind of the partnership with DEM and URI or anything else about the project?
Yeah, so this project, we're in like our 12th year now of studying woodcock. And the goal, one of the primary goals, is to figure out what kinds of places they like to hang out. And so learning, we then figure out what kind of habitat we need to create to better allow those populations to increase. So we're actually standing in a place that DM, our collaborators, have worked very hard to maintain as an opening, and these are perfect for male singing grounds. Females will nest nearby. That's one of the things that Colby's figuring out. So we've got the habitat biologist here. And yeah.
We've got our habitat biologist for DEM. We've got our upland game bird biologist for DEM. So we've got another question is, how long do woodcock live?
I think it's about 3 years, right, Scott?
We're just listening to this bird.
Yeah, we're getting buzzed by another one.
Yeah, there's one that's flying. I don't know if you guys are able to pick up the twittering, but there's this twittering. Oh,
Yeah, so now we got a male coming right by
We
here.
might be able to catch them if we put the speaker back out.
go on for another one. How many birds have you been catching in a night? Just one or more?
You can catch 2 in a night usually, if the males are close by.
Mhm.
It just depends on how many nets you want to set up. So if we scouted 5 males out here, we could catch all 5 if we want to put up all the nets for it.
Awesome.
This place is a little bit like the bar scene where the males kind of hang out and they go after each other a little bit in pursuit of the females. And so that's why you can catch multiple males
Mhm.
and hopefully a female.
It's a good pickup spot
Yeah.
for woodcock chicks.
Exactly.
So I have a question for Jenny too. So Jenny, how does like all of this research? So Scott just said, we've been doing this for like 12 years. And that's spanned 2 game bird biologists. So
Yeah, we're on the third one now.
so there's quite a few people that are working on this project, but how does all of this extra research, because you're obviously doing work of your own, on a lot, and Rhode Island has a lot of game birds, right? It's not just wild turkey, right? Jenny works on waterfowl as well. We have quite a few ducks and geese in the state. But how does this help assist with your goals for the game bird program? And like kind of also for like the region as well, because these are migratory species. Colby said something about flyway, which I want to make sure that everybody knows what a flyway is too.
Yeah, so I'll just briefly explain the flyway first. So to kind of think about birds migrating, and they migrate kind of in certain clumps, and those are kind of the flyways throughout the US and Canada. And so we're in the Atlantic flyway, and that kind of goes roughly from Florida up the East Coast into Canada. And then you were asking about how does this help me? So really, a lot of this stuff is going to help us with our habitat management, which is what we're trying to do to try and make sure that we can sustain woodcock populations in Rhode Island. They've been slowly declining now for quite some time. And so trying to figure out where, what habitats are needed by the males, but then also Colby's working with the females. And so trying to see if there's different habitat use between the two sexes, and hopefully we can kind of create the perfect landscape here. So that's really how he's helping us out. It's habitat management for these species, because we don't have a lot of young forests in Rhode Island, so hoping to make some more.
Yeah, we have a lot of really great collaborative projects with University of Rhode Island, because we are very small in numbers at the division, and they have a lot of great students, a lot of great professors, a lot of great people to help out with all of the efforts that we have to help with conservation work in the state. So we love our collaboration. We love our partnership with URI. We definitely couldn't do it without them.
It works really well for us too, because we get to train students like Colby, and he gets to rub noses directly with the biologists that are involved in managing habitat and managing species. So it works all the way around.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that we are getting pretty late now, so I don't want to keep people too late. But I don't know if you have any other things that you wanted to mention or say, or any other good, useful resources that you guys have?
Well, one of the things that we've been doing the last 3 years as part of this project is having folks that are just like you that are listening go out in the evenings and listen for woodcock, so we can track where the singing grounds are throughout the state. And so I guess the take-home message is there's ways that you can get involved as well in the kind of research that we're doing.
Awesome. And do you have, who should they contact if they want to get involved?
Erin Harrington, if you go to the URI website and just type in woodcock, you'll find my name, Scabba Williams, but also Erin Harrington's, and she's the one that's coordinating that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. And how many offspring each season? One last question. How many young do they have each
How
season?
many do you see on average, Colby?
They usually have 4 on their first nest attempt, and then if the nest fails, they'll have usually 3 on the second nest attempt. So usually 1 egg goes down each time on nesting attempt.
Yeah, and I told them about when you guys came out and helped me with the woodcock that were at my house.
Yeah.
That was a fun adventure.
Yeah.
Colby is crawling through the grass like a lion, trying to sneak up on the female. All right, well, with that, I think we'll all say goodbye. I'm trying to get everybody in there. I don't think it's gonna work. Selfie mode. Hello.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Join us for another program. We've got a lot on the docket for the rest of the spring. Trying to think. So Gabby mentioned young wildlife. We've got a snake safari, similar to this. We're looking for snakes, not at night, but during the day. That's coming up in June. We have another one coming up later in the summer. For nuisance, it's like our nuisance wildlife series, vegetable vandals. So if you have critters that are eating your vegetable garden, we are going to talk about that. So we've got a lot of really cool stuff coming up. So check out the Wildlife Outreach website, check out our Instagram, check out our Facebook. We post all the events right there on all 3 of those things. So choose your own adventure. We hope that you'll continue to come to our virtual programs, but that will be in person soon, because we really miss interacting with folks, and we're so grateful that you gave up your Monday night to spend with us virtually in the field. So thank you all so much for coming, and take care, and hopefully you'll get outside and enjoy this beautiful weather this week, because it's going to be a gorgeous week.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Stick around and we'll
Thank you.